What's going on, guys? It's your boy Magician JSO here, and they just brought back the Swole Club. So the last time they had the Swole event going on in-game, I ended up finishing with 115 points at rank 65, so I did end up getting my Mythic Bob last time. I figured since they brought the event back for a whole new round, for any players that didn't get to play it last time, maybe they're newer, I thought I'd make a complete guide to it. Same for any players that were part of it last time, but maybe were struggling along and had some trouble getting the Mythic Bob then. So I put together a whole big comprehensive guide covering pretty much everything down to hero training, deck building strategies, the whole 9 yards. So before we get into this, I just want to mention the Swole event will be going on until January 17th. That will be the last day for it till it disappears again. And then there is one prerequisite to play it. You do need to be arena level 5 or higher to participate. So if you are a newer player to the game and you want to get in on this, get yourself up to arena level 5 so you can be part of this, because you do not want to miss out. Swole Club is one of the ways you can participate to get a free Mythic card. That's the card you usually have to spend a couple $100s on if you want to get it in game, but this is your way to get it for free. So go ahead and get on that. And then before we get into it, let me just take a moment to apologize if I sound tired. I've been editing this video for the last going on like 6 hours now, and before that I worked a 9-hour shift, so I'm deadbeat tired, but I wanted to make sure I got this video edited, made, and uploaded as soon as possible so you guys could have the tips you need to do well and succeed in this challenge. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So there's a few different ways you can go about trying to get a free Mythic card through the Swole Club. Depending on whether or not you played in the last Swole event, you can go through and complete the milestones. There's 12 different ones. Milestone 1 is at 2 wins, Milestone 2 is at 5, and then at every other one after that it's at 10, 20, and every increment of 10 after that. Basically every time you win, it ups your win count there, and that's your milestones. So if you did not play in the last Swole round, you can go all the way to the milestone 12. That'll give you just enough Mythic tokens for Bob to craft the Mythic card. And along the way, just by completing the milestones, it'll give you Mythic stones, legendary stones, hero tokens, a bunch of fun stuff just to add into your inventory there to create more free stuff. If you participated in the last Swole event, then you already are sitting on some Mythic Bob fragments, in which case you do not have to go all the way to tier 12. It will vary depending on how many you already have of how far you need to go in the tiers if you want to collect the remaining fragments you need to create your Bob. If you are playing Swole for the first time, one other way you can go about getting your free Mythic Bob if you can't reach milestone 12 by reaching level 100 in Swole is by getting to at least milestone number 10, which is level 80, and then finishing in tier 9 for the rankings, which will give you the last 50 stones you need. If you're going to do this approach, however, I recommend, if you're going to finish at least 80, try to finish in tier 8 instead of 9, because come end game, everybody's going to be shooting for those last couple ones there. And the thing about Swole is, just like last time, if you look here in the rankings, just because you have the same score as someone doesn't guarantee the same ranking, because the way it determines rankings, it's whoever reached that ranking first is the one that gets the higher ranking. There is no tying in Swole. The whole point of Swole is to train up different heroes to enhance different skills and traits to help you enhance your deck to crush the competition. There's a lot of different heroes to pick from to train, and they have various different skills and traits that they are enhancing. So we're going to go through in depth and look at them all and go over the pros and cons of each. Leela is the hero that you're going to want to be training if you're running a Futurama deck this round for Swole. Her main buff is a health buff to Futurama cards, as well as for the new buff to the heroes. So for all you players that like to run Zapp as your attack hero, he also benefits from this as well. If you look here, you can see my Zapp is a level 10. His base health is 80. With the initial buff of training Leela 1 level for that 25%, buffs him up to 100 health. So that can scale all the way up to 400% should you choose to level Leela all the way up to rank 15. Last round of Swole, the hero cap was at 10, so that was the highest you could take them. With that new level cap, it does go up to 15 this round. That being said, I did score pretty high last time by just taking her to rank 9 last time for that 200% health buff, so that's probably where I'm going to take her this time as well, since it worked for me last time, and if I need to take it any higher later, I can. So the main skill that Bender is going to be buffing up for you is the shield skill. So he'll be really good to train up if you're running a lot of cards that are running the shield perk for your cards. That being said, I see the shield as being more as a secondary thing. The real draw to Bender is that once you level him to rank 3, he grants a 25% buff to the attack of all Futurama cards. So he's great if you're running a Futurama deck, as that extra attack buff is going to be key in the later levels if you want to be able to beat your opponent. In the last round of Swole, you couldn't really take it higher than 10. However, this time around, if you do want to train him up to rank 14, you can buff that up further to a 50% buff for Futurama cards. I don't think it'll be necessary, given that there are other cards you can train as well to get Futurama attack buffs. So I'm probably going to stop at rank 3 with him, and then should I need to take him higher later, I can at that time. Fry's main buff that he's going to be adding to your deck is the payback skill. So if you're running a deck full of cards that are dealing payback damage, he's a great hero to train up. He's also really good that if the hero that you're going to be running as your main attack hero has payback damage, he'll be buffing your hero out as well with that skill. The secondary skill that Fry's going to be helping you out with is once you train him up to rank 9, he grants a 25% buff to attack for all Futurama cards. So he's really good to train up if you're running an all Futurama deck as well. And once you train him up to rank 14, should you decide to take him that high, that goes up to a 50% buff to Futurama cards for attack. The main draw for training Zapp Brannigan up as your hero is going to be his main skill buff for the Motivate skill, which is really good. Motivate comes in handy a lot in later rounds if you have it trained high enough to buff your cards up to help you beat the opponent. Another great thing about running Zapp is, again, for Futurama decks, once you train him up to rank 5, he'll give you a 25% buff to all Futurama cards' attacks. And like the other heroes as well, if you decide to take him all the way up to rank 14, that jumps to a 50% buff to Futurama attack cards. So all in all, Zapp is a great hero to train up if you're going to be running a Futurama deck, or especially if you're going to be running a lot of cards with Motivate, he's definitely somebody you should focus on for your training. The main skill that Bob is going to be helping you with for buffing out is going to be the Leech skill, which is a really great skill to have pretty high leveled, because in the later levels, if you're running a lot of cards with Leech, those Leech for the health that you're getting back could be the difference between a victory and a loss. I know the Leech saved my butt a lot in the last round of Swole. I will probably be investing in it again for the research this time around to an extent as well. Another good thing about Bob is if you're running a Bob's Burgers attack deck, you only have to train him up to rank number 3 to get a 25% buff to all Bob's Burgers attack cards. So really good to run if you're running a Bob's Burgers deck. And if you decide to train him up to rank 14 or higher, you get a 50% buff to all Bob's Burgers attack cards as well. The skill that Roger is going to be buffing up for you by training him is going to be the gas skill. So if you are running a lot of cards in your deck that have the gas damage perk attached to them, he is a great hero to run, because if you can compound that percentage up, you'll be doing massive damage to your enemy's cards when you're attacking them and causing damage. That being said, Roger is also a great one to train up if you are going to be going for an American Dad deck, because if you train him up to rank 9, he grants all American Dad cards a 25% boost to their attack for their base attack, and then if you decide to take him all the way to rank 14, that becomes a 50% buff to that. If for whatever reason you're going to be running a deck full of cards with the boost attack skill, not that I know any reason why you would, however, if you were going to run a deck full of cards like that, Stewie would be your hero that you want to be focusing on training. However, the main draw to Stewie will be if you're running a Family Guy deck. By training him up to rank 5, he'll grant all Family Guy cards a 25% buff to their base attack, and should you decide to take him up all the way to 14, that jumps up to a 50% buff. If you're going to be running a Bob's Burgers deck in this Swole challenge, then Louise is the hero for you. She gives you already a base health buff to all Bob's Burgers cards, which is also something to remember will also go towards your hero should you be running a Bob's Burger hero as well. She's also fantastic for Bob's Burgers decks because once you level her to rank 5, you get a 25% buff to the base attack of all Bob's Burgers attacks, and should you decide to take her up to rank 14, that jumps up to a 50% buff. So all in all, if you're going to be running a Bob's Burgers deck, this is the hero that you do not want to be skipping. Similar to Louise for Bob's Burgers cards, Steve Smith is the hero for you to train if you're going to be running an American Dad deck. He'll grant you base health to all of your American Dad cards as you level him, as well as if you're running an American Dad hero, he'll buff that as well. And similar to the last hero, for American Dad cards, Steve, once you reach rank 5, will be granting a 25% buff to all American Dad cards for their base attack, and like all the other heroes, should you decide to take him all the way to 14 or higher, we'll buff that up to a 50% buff. Dale is going to be your guy to train if you're going to be running a lot of cards with the Bodyguard skill. That's pretty much all he's good for. He does have the secondary perk of helping you with your King of the Hill deck. However, he does not gain his first buff for King of the Hill until rank 9, which is pretty far down the line for training in the terms of like time you would need to train him. That being said, if you are putting together a full King of the Hill deck, he isn't a horrible way to go if you decide to train him up. At rank 9, he does get the usual 25% buff to King of the Hill attack for their cards, and if you take him all the way up to 14, that goes up to the 50% buff to their base attack. As you can see here, the only skill that Brian is going to be buffing for you is the Hijack skill. So unless you're going to be running a deck full of cards with the Hijack skill, this is a hero you can probably just skip over entirely. Personally, I'm not going to be running a lot of cards with Hijack. I didn't really find a need for it in the last Swole challenge, so I'm personally going to be skipping this one. So unless you have a full deck of Hijack, go ahead and save yourself the research time and the Swole tokens there and just pass on over to somebody else. So Bobby's the hero you're going to want to be training if you're running a lot of cards that have the punch skill. He's also really good to run if you're going to be running Zapp as your attack hero or any other hero with the punch skill built into it, as that will also be buffed up for as far as you decide to train him. He's also a great hero to train if you're running a King of the Hill deck as a support hero, because once you reach rank 5 with him, you get that 25% buff to your attack for all King of the Hill cards, and should you take him to 14, like all the other cards, you do get that 50% buff at 14. Peter's going to be your guy to train up if you're going to be running a Family Guy deck for the Swole Challenge. He's going to have the base health buff to all Family Guy cards once you start getting him trained up. And once you take him to rank 3 is when you get your first buff to Family Guy cards attack value. That's a 25% buff at rank 3. And if you decide to take him all the way to 14 or higher, that's when you get the 50% buff added to it. So yeah, Peter's the one you definitely do not want to skip if you're going to be going with a full Family Guy deck for the challenge. Tina's going to be your girl if you're running a lot of cards in your deck with the Cripple skill. She's also a great support one to train up if you're running a full Bob's Burgers deck, because once you train her up to rank 7, she'll get the Bob's Burger buff to attack for all Bob's Burger cards by 25%. And if you decide to take her up to the 14 or higher, you buff that up to 50%. So she's a great way to go for that, because I know a lot of Bob's Burgers combos, especially if you do music combos with them, have the cripple built in. So you have that built into that as well as getting the buff for the attack. So she's a great way to go if you're doing a Bob's Burgers deck and if you plan to mix it with music or just any cripple cards in general. Stan is a phenomenal hero to invest your time training in. He has the cheer skill, which comes in handy so much. It saved my butt so many times in the last round of Swole that I will most definitely be investing in it again. So if you are running a deck with a lot of cards that utilize cheer, I can't recommend highly enough that you should definitely spend time training him up. Another great thing about him is if you're going to be running an American Dad deck, once you get him to rank 7, you get the 25% boost to the American Dad card's attack, and like all the other cards, should you take him to 14 or higher, that jumps to a 50% buff. Hank's the hero that you do not want to miss if you're going to be running a full King of the Hill deck. Like all the other show specialty heroes, Hank gives you the buff to the King of the Hill health, as well as if you're running a King of the Hill hero, you'll get the buff to their health as well. And starting early on at rank 3, once you level him up to 3 there, you get the 25% buff to all King of the Hill cards for their base attack. and should you take him to 14 or higher, you buff that up to 50%. So definitely don't skip over Hank if you're going to be running a King of the Hill deck. Consuela's main skill that she's going to be buffing for you is the heal skill. So she'll come in handy if you're running a lot of cards in your deck that have the burger heal there as your skill, so you can be healing up all of your cards. She's also really useful for if you're running a hero like Zapp or Tina who have heal built into them, because they also take advantage of this buff. Consuela is also good as a secondary trait for Family Guy, as she gives you a buff to Family Guy cards' attacks by 25%. However, she does not get this trait until rank 9, which unfortunately is a little late in the training cycle, so you will be investing quite a bit of time to get that in if you choose to go down that route for a Family Guy deck. And like all previous ones, if you take her up to 14 or higher, that does become a 50% buff for the attack on Family Guy cards. If you're going to be running a lot of cards in your deck that have the bomb skill attached to them, then the Giant Chicken Hero is the way to go for your training course. He's also a great hero to train up if you're going to be running a full Family Guy deck for support, as once you rank him up to rank 7 in training, he grants Family Guy cards a 25% buff to their attack, and should you take him to 14 or higher, that goes up to 50%. If a lot of the cards in your deck have the sturdy skill, then Ricky Spanish is the hero you're going to want to train up. Ricky Spanish is also a great hero to train if you're running an American Dad deck, because at as early as rank 3, you get the American Dad buff of 25% for the base attack of all of your American Dad cards, and should you decide to level him all the way up to 14 or higher, that jumps up to a 50% buff for that attack. Gene's main trait that he's going to be buffing for you is the Craze skill. Now, this is a really good skill to invest in early on. However, at later levels, the AI has so much hijack that it'll be stealing a lot of your Craze, which means come end game of Swole, it's not as useful. At least that's how it played out in the last Swole challenge when I tried using it. So this time around, I probably won't be wasting too much time investing in it, as it doesn't pay off too well long game. That being said, Gene can be really good for a Bob's Burgers deck, because if you do level him up to rank 9, he does give you the 25% buff to Bob's Burgers card's attack, and then if you take him up to 14 or higher, you do get the 50%. That rank 9 is pretty steep, though, in time-wise for training to reach that buff, so it would be one of the last cards I would research for a Bob's Burgers deck, just because of how long it would take to invest in that. Not to be confused with Consuela's trait for heal, John Redcorn gives you the buff for heal all. So his buffs will only go to cards that have the golden burgers for the heal all skill. It does not apply to any with the regular colored burgers. So that being said, he's a great card to invest in if you have quite a few combos or cards in your deck that will do the heal all, if you want to get a lot of healing going. He'll apply to any heroes that give heal all to your cards, so he's great if you're running Consuela as a hero, as well as himself as a hero, because he has the heal all as well. He's also a great hero to run if you're running a King of the Hill deck, as at rank 7, if you train him up, he'll give you the 25% buff to King of the Hill cards' attacks, and if you do take him all the way up to 14 or up, that jumps up to a 50% buff. And finally, we have the Lobster of the Hour, the brand new hero that they just dropped with the Holiday Swole Challenge, Dr. Zoidberg. Zoidberg's skill that he's going to be buffing is the Cripple All skill, not to be confused with Tina's Cripple skill. The Cripple All is the golden battery clamps there. It only applies to the golden ones, not the regular clamps. He will be buffing all Cripple Alls as you level him up, as well as once you get him to 7, he'll get the Futurama buff to Futurama cards for a 25% increase to their attack, and if you take him all the way up to 14 and above, that goes up to a 50% buff. So all in all, Zoidberg is a phenomenal hero to train if you're going to be working on cards and combos that have that Cripple All, because a Cripple All deck can be devastating to the point to where your opponent just can't do any damage against you. So by all means, if you're going to be running a deck with a bunch of Cripple All cards and combos and a bunch of Futurama cards, go ahead and just max him out and train him as far as you want. Once in a Swole match, if you click the yellow barbell button in the top right corner, you can see your active Swole stats for your skills that you've trained on the left there, as well as your opponents that they have active on the right. And as you progress through the Swole Club, your opponent's bonuses will also increase as well. And now that we've gone in depth with all the different heroes and training, I'm going to show you guys my deck and show you my strategy for Swole. So for my Swole deck, I'm focusing on a Futurama deck with an emphasis on music combos. I'm going to be trying to make Red Rodriguez's and the Opera Leela, as those are the two combos with their cheer trait that really helped me score well in the later rounds in the last Swole challenge. So I'm going to be going for those combos in this deck. I do have two Amy's in the deck currently that do not go with any of the music cards. They are just placeholder cards at the moment until I can go ahead and quad fuse another one of my fries there. The reason I just have them in there is because they do take advantage of the Futurama buff when I do have the training, so they at least have more health where they can take a hit. You'll also notice I'm running Zapp Brannigan as my hero because since he is a Futurama hero, he also benefits from the buffs from the hero training for Futurama. And to wrap up, here are some final tips and tricks to help you succeed in the Swole challenge. Early on in the challenge, you want to make sure that you train a lot of your heroes to level 2 in order to maximize the Swole coin bonus. Because later on, when you start to focus in on the heroes and traits you want to increase and train, it starts to get real expensive for those Swole coins. So you want to max out that bonus now so that as you play every day, you're earning the max amount of coins that you can earn. You also, when you start dialing down in on what you want to train on, you want to focus on only a few heroes and traits to work on overall when maxing out. You don't want to spread yourself too thin, otherwise you're going to force yourself to have to either waste gems down the line to get your training done, or you just won't have your training done, and then you won't be able to finish as strong and you might miss out on your Mythic Bob. And then also you want to make sure that you're focusing on increasing your card's health and attack, because these will be key later in the levels that you're going to come up against. Because the later levels in Swole, those opponents have some really crazy buffs applied to their card. So you definitely want to focus on those two, as well as any skills that'll help you overcome them. And one last big piece of info regarding the Swole challenge is that unlike last time, there is no global BGE that affects this challenge anymore. So if you didn't buy into Fighter, you didn't buy into Athletic, once Armed kicks in, if you didn't buy into Armed, those are not going to be working against you. It is strictly based on the training you are doing, which is phenomenal. Because I know the last time we had Swole, it was really difficult because the opponent's cards, if you didn't buy into the BGE, you were getting hit hard. So that's no longer going to be an issue this round in the Swole challenge, which I think is great. Well guys, that's going to complete my guide to the Swole Club. I hope you found this video insightful and helpful. If you did and want to see more Animation Throwdown content, please go ahead and click the subscribe button and leave a like on the video. I'm going to try and upload some more gameplay of the actual Swole challenge of my hits on the later levels so you can see my strategy in action. Also, if you have any differing opinions or if you want to share your own strategy for how you're going to approach Swole, let me know in the comment section. Well guys, thanks again for watching. Till next time, peace.